Welcome to part 12 of my development process of a Fallout game set in Berlin, and today it's finally time to cover what I wanted to show last week. Fallout Iron Curtain is a game-sized mod for Fallout 4 made by a few others and myself that takes place in a Germany that never reunified. Since the Wall of Berlin, so the Iron Curtain fits perfectly for Fallout's never-ending Cold War scenario, my great-grandmother from Poland used to live in East Germany for a while, I had this long period of studying political science with a waypoint on Eastern Europe to explore my roots, while also living and growing up in Germany for so long, this project has been feeling like a serendipity. In last week's episode that you can check in the info card at the top right corner of the video right now, I asked what you think comes next. And we have some winners! Because if East Germany didn't fall, it is safe to argue they would have preserved one of their proudest brutalist buildings. Eric's lamp shop, the Palace of the Republic. Opened on April 23, 1976, it served as the parliament for the East German government in central Berlin until it had to be closed for high asbestos exposure in 1990. Between 2006 to 2008, it was torn apart by the reunified Germany to make space for the Humboldt Forum, which meant I had no Street View images available to me to nail all the details. All I had were Google Images and the deep archives of the internet to rely on. But then, it doesn't have to be a 100% accurate replication anyways, as we could always argue modernizations and renovations could have altered the building until the Great War in 2077. I started building this on April 23rd, 2026, without even realizing that it was theoretically the 50th anniversary of it until after the fact. Further, I finished this on May 4th, the day on which people celebrate another republic. As you can see in this speed-up video, I predominantly stuck to pre-existent assets from the Fallout 4 Creation Kit engine to ensure we keep the file size of the mod rather low. The reasoning behind my decision to keep it so moderate on new objects is not only the vast effort of proper integration, but also that PCs these days become insanely expensive, and will be for a while until AI data centers either stop buying all the SSDs and RAMs off the market or the AI bubble bursts. Since I know how it is to have no money, it's been a very personal motivation to make the mod more accessible whenever it comes out in Todd knows how many years. On top of that though, Bethesda keeps actively exploring the possibility of expansion of file size limit for Xbox together with Microsoft. Not that I think this mod will ever be available for console, but keeping an eye on that from the sideline might prove fruitful. Once I had the rough exterior built, I made a copy of it for a backup for potential loading screen and LOD models, because then it was time to move it into a place where it's off-grid and hence harder to assemble from all the little pieces. Because you see, the location is northeast oriented, so pretty much 45 degrees. After the Terror of the Berlin TV Tower's entrance building post, I will stick with 45. But the grid pattern in the engine that allows easy snapping is not aligned to that. So that's why I built the building first on the grid to move it afterwards then. And so I can finally avenge myself to how dirty those socialists did me with the TV tower and replace single pieces of the Palace of the Republic for far more destroyed post-war look. You can do that with either pressing Ctrl F if you already know what the specific piece you want to put in place, or just hold Alt on your keyboard and scroll with the mouse wheel to scroll through all the static meshes alphabetically until you grow old. Some people may call it the Elder Scrolls. That was a lot of work, because it hence required me to also make a part of the interior as part of the exterior. Because it'd look odd otherwise if you have a blasted hole, but nothing to it. You can maybe do that on a roof, but if it's at the side of a building and you cannot peek into it, yeah, that's a little strange. So I started to build the foyer of the Palace of the Republic as well, that had partially broken ceilings and balconies of its runways. Now, this also will put us on a different challenge that we will see towards the end of the video, because Fallout Iron Curtain will feature a nuclear winter, in which the player has to not only fight ugly creatures, hostile factions and radiation, but also the cold. This means that part of the interior I am building here will require some snow that fell through the holes in the roof. While this seems like a tacky task, it was essential in checking how we would solve this for other building in the future too, because my current priority lies in building myself, building by building towards the Brandenburg Gate where the wall used to be at, for such solutions and asset creations we are still missing, so other level designers later on have an easier job too. Because on top of that, the creation engine has a maximum reference limit for exteriors, and since Berlin is so gigantic, it is not unthinkable we'll divide East and West Berlin into their own plugins with their own world space, each while also using the same files to get around that reference limit. That is also why I recommend not loading any DLCs as requirements for your mod, but rather reference the objects you want to use and work them in by yourself. Because yes, the DLCs take up references from that limit too. We still need a lot of 3D models, so I have made overhead wire posts for trains and this East German abomination. Is it a bus? Is it a truck? What do you think? A voting is available on this video. The feature is called Quiz, but honestly let's make this a voting instead. Let's show YouTube the true potential of the platform. Using the spline endpoint marker for both ends of a cable spline and pressing P on the keyboard allowed me to drag a line of a metal cable whose physics are not affected by the wind of the game. However, wherever a line is interrupted, I give the hanging cables that very difference. At the same time, I decided I wanted to give the glass front its iconic orange tint, but I stumbled upon some problems here. First, it became pink, as if it was missing the texture, but that wasn't the issue upon checking. It's that it's a grayscale texture that hence requires some minor tweaking that Captain Ultima was able to show me in the material editor. Once that was done, however, and I replaced the solid and transparent glass, looking at both revealed different reflections of each. Despite trying to work on that with specular and cube maps, it just never worked out properly, and so I decided to sit down and turn the solid glass into transparent glass, that then received black planes behind them. That way the interior stays hidden from the player, and the area isn't as heavy on the rendering while also maintaining the proper reflection. Because you may know, for better performance, a lot of games like Fallout 4 make the interiors an own level. That is why you sometimes have a loading screen in entering a building, for example. But anyways. The next part that was to do is placing down the snow. Instead of adding more textures to all the various objects, we are using a simple projected decal facing the ground. It has sharp borders because it's the same texture I'm using for the landscape itself, but where it comes to an end, I used the flat 2D mesh Clutter Gen Slime A and gave it a material that looks like a little transition. Overall, a very savvy method to keep the file size of this mod as low as possible. However, some objects, like stairs, will still require a little material swap as the snow texture is being dragged distortedly over each step in a very ugly way. On the parking lot, I placed down an armed ICBM for the player to disarm, based upon the script Green Foxel made before covered previously. It also knocked down one of the overhead wire poles and caused all the cars to burn out, though we still have no tributes worked into the game as 3D models. This all will serve a future quest regarding a faction that will only become peaceful towards the player upon solving that crisis. However, I don't want to take away too much of that right now. Without further ado, let's walk around in that area a little bit to enjoy the fruits of this creation so far with an ambient soundtrack I made myself with the free Apple software GarageBand just for this project. More ambient tracks for free use can be found and downloaded on my SoundCloud and Ko-fi shop. I hope as always that you did like this video, and I'll see you next week with more from this project. Huge thanks to my monthly Ko-fi supporters, and I catch you another time, another day.